So we're going to learn some fundamentals of rigging with a very basic character, and we're going to use only nonlinear deformers and parenting to rig our character here. Now let's look at what we're going to go through. First off, we're going to try and follow what I think are what makes a good rig. It should be as simple as possible. If you add unnecessary complication, it can make it so that the animator might not be able to work on it, but also it might mean that it's harder to fix if you have problems later on. A good rig follows logical patterns. The animator should be able to understand where things are, and it should make sense why certain controls are where they are. You wouldn't put the hand control on the foot. A good rig makes things easy for the animator. This is the whole thing here. A rig is for animation. It's not to make the coolest rig you can make. It's to make it so that the animator can do their job. A good rig is fast to animate. Sometimes when we get complicated with our rigs, it can slow down our rig quite a bit. So we need to find ways to speed that up. And what we're going to be doing today is going to be very fast. It's not going to have a problem. And then a good rig can be adjusted with minimal side effects, meaning when we have to fix it, we don't have to redo. The animator wouldn't have to redo any of their work, right? Now, when we're rigging, we need to be organized. We need to know what we're doing. So I would say that there are some main things to keep in mind when we're organizing ourselves and getting ready to rig. The first is naming conventions. Next is hierarchy organization, and then connections. So naming conventions are organization-wide policies on how to name objects and files. So if you're at Mahidol University, you're going to name your rig according to the naming conventions that are set down here. So for example, left should be L underscore, right R underscore. At the end, this is in the front, LR. But if it's a joint, it should be left, let's say arm joint. Constraints, CNT, groups, GRP, controls, CTL, and geometry should have a geo name to it. So let's start with that first. So if I look at this guy, and I go to my outliner, I've already named the body. This is called body, skull mask, big feather, small feather. Alright? Now, not only have I named it, I have also parented it. Now, none of these, if you notice, these are supposed to say geo at the end. So I'm going to get my Comet rename, which is a script that you can get from Creative Crash. You can download it. It's called Comet rename. And I'm going to rename all of these guys, and I'm going to give it a suffix, and I'm going to say geo. So now these have the suffix of geo. So this is all geometry. Alright. Next, so we have our naming conventions. Now we have our hierarchy. So you see here, the body here is at the top, skull, feathers, everything is underneath that. Alright? Okay? So what we're going to do next is we're going to create some controls. We're going to create a control. So I have the script, which is control curves that I have created, and for my local control I like to use the circle arrow. This looks something like this, and I want the pivot point to be at the 0, 0. So I'm going to keep that, and I'm going to just move it up just a little bit like this. Alright. And then, so now I have kind of, this is going to be my main control. And I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this local control. So CTL is control. Alright? And I can actually go here, body, and I can group it again. So again, this is a very simple way. Why do I want to group it? I can move everything. I can scale it. I can do everything underneath here. Alright? Now another thing that's important is making sure that your pivot points are correct. Now this character, the feet, not really feet, but where the root of it is right here. So that's why I put the pivot point here. That means if I'm going to rotate it, it rotates from this area. Now the helmet, if he's jumping around, I might want to be able to have the helmet kind of flap, doing, 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 so I can add a pivot point right there. Same thing with like these featherish things right here in the back. I want to put the pivot point right at the base so that they can rotate up and down or left and right as I wish. Right? Up and down. Okay? And I might even want to put my small feather to be underneath my big feather, so that if I move my big feather, I only have to animate one, and both of them move, and if I can later on animate this one to have secondary motion, a little bit offset from this one. So that's one option right there. Alright? Now what you might notice is this character has no eyes, and the reason is when building the eyes for a cartoony character like this, I like to set up the eyes